Before I dive into this piece in focus, I'm going to probe a question to you, the audience member. If you're somebody that is familiar with Fallen in Reverse, did you have the same journey that I did upon a first entrance, that being Popular Monster? That's the first track that approached me. And I understand that Fallen in Reverse has been around for a long time. I've since, in the year that I've been listening to them, consulted a majority of the tracks offered on their library. But I'm still making my way through, at least in some of their older albums. I've heard most of the stuff that got a music video and stuff, but Popular Monster was my first exposure. And I just fell in love with this band immediately. And from what I've heard, that's been the same statement from many fans. I don't know how wide, though, which is why I'm curious to engage, if I can, at least with some of the members of my audience who are approaching Fallen in Reverse with familiarity. Did you have the same road, or was it another piece that brought you in? Have you been a fan for longer, before Popular Monster? That piece immediately set an impression in my mind. And it helps, of course, I'm a big metalhead. That genre obviously appeals to me first before anything else. I have open tastes. I consider talent to be really anywhere. I try to keep an open door as much as possible. But I've explored projects, in fact, that on this channel that have come out in different genre tones. Metal, though, is so attractive to me. And not just the energy of the piece, which was frenetic, energetic, full of life, in my opinion, aggressive, rash, aggressive metal is what I immediately gravitate to that specifically. But the depth of their pieces as well, the subject matter of what Fallen in Reverse touches on, and the potency of it. Which this is a common sentiment I've expressed before in regards to metal music. It's part of the reason I've gravitated so much into this space. I like raw emotion and honesty in music. And where people in my life personally did not understand why I gravitated to the metal scene, and to some degree still don't. I remember all the judgmental stares that I got for a while. I realized, what metal music has done for me. I've said many times, part of the reason I evolved a showcase of music on this channel was from the standpoint of this being the art form that I've intersected through my life with the most. Music for me is very much a first love, and it's been closer to me, not just in my enjoyment, but also in my maturity, than people have. Music's been there for me in difficult seasons, as it might be for everybody. Music can have a very cathartic nature, and I find Fallen in Reverse establishes that very well and adeptly. And a lot of it seems to be based on personal experience. In the time since I first engaged with that piece, like I said, I've heard a number of their works from their older past offerings. And I've, in the process, learned about Ronnie Radke's story, and I find him to be a very interesting man, at least in consideration. I mean, I don't know everything. And maybe some of the details are getting lost to me because I've considered a lot of information, and there's a lot of other groups I consult to, so perhaps information overlaps. But I had a really good impression with Fallen in Reverse from Popular Monster. And again, like I said, I'd be curious to hear if that was the same route that anybody took. Or maybe you're approaching this being a very knowledgeable fan even beyond that. You spent a long time with Fallen in Reverse, or perhaps this is a fresh introduction. And I hope for some of you that is the case with ZOMBIFIED, which we're about to listen to together in a moment for the first time. I do hope in part that my channel, as I build out the focus on music concentration, which has been a long ambition of mine, as I said, being such a principal art form in my life, I hope that in some way, if there's anybody that is going artist shopping but doesn't necessarily know where to look, my channel is providing routes for you to explore new talents. Fallen in Reverse deserves substantial attention. I mean, they already have it. They're very well known in the metal scene, very well established at this point for many. But I'll tell you, nobody in my circles, though, probably knows their name. Which is why I still, to some extent, reach out in regards to the groups that I listen to. I like to showcase talents that deserve that spotlight, and Fallen in Reverse has been a treat to enamor myself with. I've already got a wide berth of their tracks on my phone as we speak, and it's been a wonderful experience to expose myself to very talented metal musicians, the likes of which, I mean, I've heard similar energy across different places, but the creativity of Fallen in Reverse really amazes me. And with ZOMBIFIED, I'm sure that'll be an equal experience to what I've dealt with in the past. And I hope for you it's the same. As we make our way through Neon Zombie and some of the newer offerings presently available from Fallen in Reverse, and I'm always game to hear new stuff. I mean, the minute these tracks came out, I'm like, yes, I am game. Let me hear this. Even though I'm covering them very late. Apologies. And you wouldn't necessarily know this, but I'll get to that in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and queue up Fallen in Reverse so that perhaps you are getting a first exposure, or for those of you that this is a knowledgeable group, you now get to see my take being a fan of Fallen in Reverse. Have I attributed that before in my past covers? Maybe not. I think I have on some occasions. But some of you might not have known I love this group. I do. And I've been waiting for the opportunity to talk about them publicly. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up Zombified, and we'll get to engage this perhaps for some of you for the first time, and for others it'll be a repeat experience if somebody's listening to it fresh. I'm going to go ahead, as I said, and cue up the music video to accompany this, which their music videos, by the way, are always a treat to watch, especially as of late. Since Popular Monster, or since the revamped versions of The Drug in Me Is You and I'm Not a Vampire, the latest of which, I love that one. They're like mini movies. So they're always a fun experience in terms of entertainment. It feels like a full picture. Falling in Reverse to me is such an individualized talent in my library. And I can't wait to explore Zombified with you after we listen to the track together, and for those of you who are not familiarized with how I format my coverage on this channel. I try and accommodate listener tastes to the best extent that I can, and with a piece like Zombified, perhaps it helps to read the message along with the song to accompany it. So I will have the lyrics available for you if you'd like to read along with them in the video feed. They'll track along with the song as we proceed through it. Now, as I was saying, to offer some disclosure, because this might confuse people when I pull up the video, or when you get to see my first impression. I actually, like I said, I've been waiting to cover this band for months. I filmed this video months ago. I wasn't happy with the introductory phases nor the discussion, in particular because this song and its compatriots, presently, speaking of what's available, Voices in My Head and Watch the World Burn, which we'll touch on in separate videos, require a deeper contemplation. And I've reflected on them in the months since, and they're really rewarding listens. But thus, that being my takeaway with it, and that it required the deeper experience, I was not necessarily happy with the introductory phases and the discussion phase of said video. So while I'm able to isolate the recording, which is why I offer this disclaimer, is you're going to see a shift. I filmed this months ago. This is the original first impression. As far as the discussion is concerned, at the end of that, it'll cut immediately, but I'll hop back in. But what you're about to see is a video that I've been hoping to publish for a long while now, because again, I've been in a deep embrace and enchantment with Falling in Reverse for a long time, especially in regards to the Neon Zombie EP. Presently, of what was available in the recording, 2 tracks. And also, as another disclaimer, I did film these out of order. So Voices in My Head, which is the next track we'll consult, again, like I said, in a separate video, that I actually covered first. But what you're seeing here in terms of the order of my publication is the right order to what was released in regards to, I'm pretty sure, the tracks, but also the visualizers. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and cut out in the present tense. And what you'll see perhaps is, again, a couple months belated, and I apologize, I'm a bit late to the scene, but I've wanted to talk about this group for a long while. We'll cut to my first impressions, and then I'll hop back in for the discussion phase of the video where we can talk about Zombified in much more depth. And one more note going in, if you're somebody who has not heard this track before, pay careful attention to the lyrics. And maybe you might be engrossed by the video and the song, but pay special notice to what the messages of the piece, at least illustrated by the artist's construction of lyrics, because we're going to talk about that more in the analysis. And again, like I said, it's a piece that deserves examination at a deep level. And it'll help if perhaps you can see the root of where it's taking in discussion. It's pretty direct, but I think it will be of benefit to you. Based on the message of the song, the vision of the video is already fitting. Sort of like the subsequent after effects. I don't know. Oh, okay. I kind of hear the darker energy coming in. I didn't expect... I get zombified, literally. That's good. Nice engaging intro. Visceral atmosphere too in that background.
Stars are living under your bed, 'cause they are the voices in your head. Zombified by the lies they said, we become the walking dead.
That's beautiful. Love the mapping of this, it's excellent. Really strong chorus from a tune standpoint. What an interesting illustration. It is a good compliment.
Then bite your tongue, 'cause you don't wanna piss off anyone. We're traumatized by the damage done. Welcome to America.
Sobering. This is such a good verse. I guess it's like a good zombie thriller, right? Even to the visual imagery. This is a really dark look at reality, but wow. It's like, what, it's become an alien invasion thriller? Or is this like... I'm trying to follow here. Oh no, I kind of get it. Okay. Oh, I got softer interlude.
Zombified.
Well, that's interesting. What a great video, though. That's such a visceral experience. As I said in the beginning, it's common, especially among their recent offerings. Again, I think back, I don't remember exactly when it started in terms of what track was first, because my first entranceway was Popular Monster, and if one of the other pieces in terms of the revamped version was the launch pad for all these cinematic mini-movies that band produces, which again, put them in this very unique space. I mean, I'm very familiar with conceptual artists, especially lately. A lot of rock groups and metal groups have been playing around with that type of vibe. But I've never seen anybody go to the extent in visual presentation quite like Fallen in Reverse. But I don't know if it began with the revamped songs or Popular Monster in terms of release date. So I want to be fair and not falsely attribute something which never in reference would not be correct. I mean, they've always had a bit of a cinematic vibe even beyond that. I think back, for example, to the trilogy, Losing My Mind, Losing My Life, and Drugs. All those songs are so good. Again, if you happen to be a fresh listener, maybe this is the first approach for you, their library has some wonderful metal tunes that will just remain as staples in your mind. Zombified does. In the months since I've listened to it, at least on that first glance of what you initially just watched, and in the months I've re-listened to it, and I've been listening to it quite a lot, it's a very memorable piece. Not just, again, on the visual engagement. It's excellent storytelling. I feel like I'm watching like a big sci-fi horror movie in part. But again, even the tune in itself is heavily engrossing. The rage, the metal side, I love that aggression. And it's got a great pacing to it, too. It's very lively. In some parts, it comes off more subdued, I think, to impart and bolden the lyrics. It's a varied pacing as well. There's capacities with Fallen in Reverse and what they achieve in regards to artistic offerings that really impress me. This is very much like a mainstream metal rock song, but it just has this wonderful, potent flair. And a lot of that is due to the message, which is why I've, especially in the recent couple of months, just adored Fallen in Reverse as a band so much in regards to being an inspirational talent and one that I constantly recognize. Like I said, if this was a fresh listen for you, I forewarned you to pay careful attention to the lyrics. And you could probably hear the message again if you were listening. I indicated as much, when I looked at the song, gave you that subtle presentation cue. It's rooted in the song where he says they're canceling you. That's basically the energy of the piece. And a lot of their songs as of late have been very revolutionary in regards to their spirit, right? They're aggressive against mindsets, people, personality dynamics. There are different ways, and plus music, is subjective in regards to its interpretation. You can take a song and interpret it, in a different way than perhaps the artist intended. I've mentioned this with many songs I've covered. Perhaps I've kept it faithful interpretation, but explored it in a different way. This will be the case when I cover Voices in My Head. When we get to that piece, that one that's convicting. I mean, if you thought Zombified was potent, I mean, get ready for that one. As well as Watch the World Burn. It just seems, again, this rashness that the band utilizes is, or at least, how do I phrase that? Rashness in comparison to other groups. In honesty. I admire it quite a bit. I prefer music to be honest, and that's what I see oftentimes in the metal market. Maybe it's part of the reason that I find it a disassociation from other norms of what maybe my peers listen to in my general vicinity. Again, I don't have much relatability, as I've said many times, where it comes to my music playlist. I don't have that many connections in my personal life. Through what I've covered on this channel, yes, I've been able to meet a lot of you in regards to other rock and metal fans, and it's been a wonderful experience I didn't necessarily foresee. But it's been wonderful to have that sense of, and I don't like to use this word because it's a bit overused these days and it kind of has come across as stale. I tend to be a bit more originalist in my expression, or at least I try to aspire to that. But it's been great to have a sense of community fostering and building connections through just looking at music and finding commonality in other people's tastes. Again, metal has been a long favorite of mine, and Falling in Reverse just sits in really nicely on the music side alone. Again, analyzing that piece, maybe that's what you took away from it. It's wonderful in regards to the musical craftsmanship. It's very engaging. It's wonderful to take on walks, too. I tend to go walking as a preferred form of exercise quite often in town, and I'll just throw on Falling in Reverse, plug headphones in, and tune out, and it's just a great experience. The piece in itself, though, like I said, is very convicting. A lot of the work that they've been publishing lately on part of the Neon Zombie EP is in some way socially relatable. This in particular, when you listen to the lyrics, what does he explicitly say? They're canceling you. A direct inspiration, I believe this was indicated by a band quote, or just routine interpretation on part of many. But the song is exploring cancel culture to some depth. And maybe other types of explorations, like I said, music can be subjective upon listener interpretation. But in terms of the provided message, I believe it is examining the impact of cancel culture in general society. And it has a very creative way of exploring that. Through a figurative lens, yes, it imagines a zombie apocalypse, where I guess the embodiment of what they represent, and this is a very symbolic video, there's, I guess, the masses that enact said canceling and perform that action on part of perhaps misleading information. You see, for example, the hypnosis circles of how these people are controlled. And I think there was one point, too, where one of the zombies, yes, looks at herself in a shard of glass and sees, these pieces are so convicting. Even upon, like, how many listens I've given this piece, it just, There's always more to explore, but she looks in a glass reflection and she sees, I guess, the image of what she used to look like, and she's horrified because now she's seeing the result, I guess, of perhaps labor that was done unto her that she never asked for, which again you could say maybe alludes to the path of society and that we're sort of products of the world around us, and we don't necessarily see the transformation that an ill society imparts on our character. So the zombies, I guess, are, again, the masses, and if I had to put a popular embodiment of what they represent, I guess, in modern sense and popular attribution, I would say the Twitter mob, for example. We all know, perhaps, even if we're not necessarily the most informed on the matter, how toxic people on Twitter can be. I've seen this routinely with cancel culture stories. I'll get to that more. I'll come back on that point. Let's focus more so on the symbolism of the videos. Like I said, they're sort of the masses that are trained. And this video in particular, I mean, it has a direct message. At one point it says, I forget, like, we're traumatized by the damage done, welcome to America. There's that specific explicit mention. It's very much a westernized problem. Even though maybe it's happening in other countries and I'm not necessarily aware if it is, America is like the hotbed for cancel culture issues lately. In the 2022 and even into the 2023 year, it's still happening. Albeit, again, I'll get to that in a minute. But it feels particularly potent and, again, specifically minded, and I appreciate that as a message. So again, that's sort of tailoring the location of where this is taking place, and then the zombie apocalypse turns into what I assumed was an alien invasion, just based on other cinematic media of what I've covered personally in this channel, what I've watched. You know, for example, for those of you who are not familiar, I tend to put a lot more attention, not just on passion. Again, I'm trying to build music coverage out, but I've spent more years in the entertainment landscape, what's available in like Hollywood cinema fare. I'm assuming maybe that's an embodiment for, I don't know. Still, even all these times I've given this song a listen and watched the video and rewatched it, I'm still not completely familiar, at least on some elements of the interpretation. I was going to say perhaps they're like governmental entities or the powers that be that are enacting cancel culture, but they necessarily don't care about the masses and that we're just all sucked in. I have no way to explain what this end thing is in terms of like the kaiju. I don't know. I don't know what that's meant to embody. Perhaps some of you have spent some time in this video as well if you're a knowledgeable and experienced Fallen in Reverse fan and you're better aware of what exactly he's referring to. Because even for somebody like me who tends to look a lot into poetic symbology, I don't always know the interpretation of the artist no matter how much I try and dig. I do appreciate that background whenever you can get it. But some things I just don't know. So I'm not sure what the end beastie type thing was. Feel free to clarify down below if you have a window in understanding. But in terms of a cancel culture commentary, it's very potent, I think. Again, like I said, I admire the honesty of this piece. And I've certainly not made a secret on this channel of how widely opposed I am to the action of cancel culture. I'm sure many of us know, but if anybody needs an explanation, it's sort of, it's evolved, I guess, for the last couple of years, but it really took precedence, I think, in 2021 in regards to concentration. 2020, 2021 were like the prime years. It's starting to wane off now. It's not waning off. It's not fair to say. When I think of cancel culture, and my take on this has evolved over time, in particular to how many instances that I've seen of people that have been wrongfully treated for some petty indifference of opinion or personal expression, worldview. There's a lot of variety into how people... We live in a day and age where people cannot live civilly amidst disagreement. If anybody expresses some sort of a disagreement, it's like all hell breaks loose. That's sort of the world we live in now, and I hate it. I don't like seeing society on that boiling point, and yet it's been for the last couple of years. But my take has evolved with cancel culture into my... Not that I have a change of opinion. I still widely oppose it. But I understand more so why, from personal experience, I believe. I don't like seeing people being unreasonably hurt. And a lot of these cancel culture issues, I'll bring up a sampling of stories in the comment section. I was going to say maybe I'll overlay them in the video, but there's just too many to mention. I still see people mention these days, like, oh, there's no such thing as cancel culture. It's some sort of political fantasy. No, it's not. It's not. I've seen way too many examples of cancel culture to call it some sort of fever dream from a certain entity or, whatever it's referred to as. People being unduly treated and... for whatever reason, usually, it's not like of some sort of moral objection, right? If it were like some sort of criminal infraction, then I would say, yes, keep people accountable. But that's not what's happening. It's usually over some sort of petty expression, or someone offers an opinion, let's say, for example, on social media, and suddenly someone decides to go way above board where anybody should in regards to a response. Some people go the extreme of just, and I'm not speaking necessarily of like just pushback through comments, but some people prefer mob antagonism. Some people go the extra mile of trying to dox people. We've seen that in regards to releasing private information online. Some people go into harassment, going into private messages, sending some obscene comments, sending death threats, some poetically even. People have certainly evolved how they've done this in line of certain social media entities. Let's say, for example, the new leadership over Twitter. There's been a number of policy changes on that front. Speaking of the Elon Musk acquisition, people have gotten much more creative in the way that they express particular obscene statements that nobody should repeat. I've seen abbreviations, statements told through memes. And people have even gone beyond that. Some people have tried to go into people's, job employment status and leak out information, contact employers, try to get people fired from their jobs, go after people's families. I've even seen people go to the extent of possibly risking other people's deaths for swatting. That's been a big one. At least I've seen some other content creators who have dealt with that. And none have died, as far as I'm aware. I'm sure I think people have died from swatting, though. It's a huge risk. I'm tired of seeing the unreasonable behavior in regards to disagreement. That's sort of, again, my baseline stance with cancel culture. But in evolution of understanding on it, I think the reason I'm so counter to it is because I see a lot of what I went through. And I'll never change my stance on this. Though I don't think the DSM-5 or 6 or whatever edition we're on is going to be rushing to label cancel culture as its own form of abuse. I see a lot of overlap in the way certain abuse types, let's say for example, emotional, physical, psychological, I see the way that those behave and I look at cancel culture, and it frightens me to see a movement that's accepted in society by some, not everybody, but some, that would, for whatever reason, attention, power, political gain even, I mean, cancel culture isn't even necessarily a political issue in inception. It just, I would say it has political intersection points. It terrifies me to watch a society, to some extent, welcome abusive behavior to the point of making it an intangible industry. As somebody who dealt with, and I've made no secret of this on the channel, as somebody who was emotionally abused and psychologically abused for 21 years, I was told to the extent that I was quote-unquote emotionally brainwashed. That was said to me by a victim of different contexts, but very similar pathways of abuse. Though not as horrific, and in every way I want to specify it was not physical, or, you know, some people might be like, when you say you're abused, I mean, that can mean a number of things. Which is why I specify it was emotional and psychological. It wasn't physical, it wasn't sexual, anything like that. And I do consider myself fortunate because a lot of people have had to live in that type of hell in life. Not of their own making, of course. I see a lot of what I went through personally in regards to what I've suffered as an abuse victim. And I look at cancel culture from that lens. Part of the consequence of being, and this is something you oftentimes see in stories of abuse, some people have a tendency to become a bit empathic. And I do have overlapping traits where I'm very sensitive to other people. So for me, when I watch someone suffering unduly, and sometimes to great severity, which should never have been in any way a result of a situation, my heart breaks. I see a lot of these cancel culture stories, and it infuriates me the extent that people will go. Usually just for the sake of a simple disagreement over something. And a lot of the ones I've seen, granted, again, they have intersected with the political market. I don't think cancel culture in itself is a political issue. I think cancel culture is more so a byproduct of a toxic culture that we live in as human beings in the world that we live in today. It speaks to human depravity. And that for some of us, there's no threshold of low we won't cross. Perhaps short of literally murdering somebody, we will go the full extent that we can to enact vengeance. It horrifies me to see abuse being welcomed by some, not everybody, but to see it being welcomed openly, especially on such a grand scale as we've seen over the last couple of years. And again, I put a good spattering of stories in the comments that could reference this. And I could dive into some, but I want to keep this video at least a bit simple and focused. And I get that I watch this, and from my understanding of Ronnie Radke's story, there is some personal intersection as well with the life that he's lived and some of what he's gone through. I know that apparently he's got his critics. I don't know why. I respect Ronnie Radke a lot in regards to his bluntness. Again, like I said, this is a commonality in the metal scene. I respect honesty. And Ronnie's story has been very interesting to learn, just in what I've considered. And there are intersection points that have been made known to me. I mean, for example, I guess this mic stand reference, which I just thought was a kind of a creative attribution in the video for humor. I've never seen a zombie taken out that way. I mean, I've seen in terms of cinematic media, violent things done with microphone stands. I mean, think of Luke Cage, for example. Anyway, I guess there's still some people that look at him with animus. I don't know why. That's another problem. You know, I look at this again, the perspective of cancel culture. Speaking again on the Ronnie Radke note, I see a very respectful man, especially in terms of intellect. Ronnie Radke, and the band broadly, has a talent for imagining the realities of emotional experiences quite well in a tangible manner, but for some of us it might be more challenging to illustrate abstract concepts. I'm going to explore that more with Voices in My Head, because I think it's even a more applicable setting in discussion than this one is. I look at cancel culture as well, not just from the perspective of being an abuse victim, but also from the perspective of being a Christian. We live in a society that, and I've made no secret about my faith, we live in a world that's forgotten to forgive. We can't get past other people's differences to the point that we are willing to destroy others for some morbid sense of justice or injustice, which, here's another thing. I mean, again, I'm trying to keep this simple. There's so many strands I could pull here with cancel culture and my feelings on it. The routine issues that are oftentimes highlighted by cancel culture ordeals are not anything worth a public revolution or outcry. And sometimes the things that are more dangerous to our society rather than a contradictory opinion or some sort of individualized expression get unnoticed. I think, for example, and they're noticed by some admittedly, yes, but they don't get the grand scale that some of these cancel culture stories do. And again, I'm giving you a spotlighting down in the comment section, whether they be maybe well-known or lesser known. But some of the well-known ones, they get all the headlines in the world. But then I think of other situations, like in terms of what needs accountability in our society, what is an absolute wrong. I think of cuties. I think of the Balenciaga story. I think of, what was the one recently? There was another one that came just to my mind. It's kind of a passing thought. But there was another story that, human trafficking, sex trafficking, issues like that. Those get seldom recognition. And yet, aren't those more so, if we're going to talk about cancel culture, we're going to cancel anything, aren't those types of associated behaviors to those situations worth highlighting? I mean, I gave you at least a couple examples, and that's just a few. There's probably many that you can mention. Those never get any recognition, seemingly, by mainstream media, the press, and there have been, and that's even more so horrifying to me. It's not just been like, social media mob activity that's weaponized abuse, industrialized it with cancel culture. You've had media organizations that some people have gotten into it with as well. Again, as an abuse victim and as somebody who has a heart for other people, it angers me to see that we live in a world that just can't forgive one another or even learn to live amidst difference. I remember, when I grew up as a kid, that was a world that I grew into. It's like, what changed? I see a song like this, again, as very timely and encouraging. It's nice to see a band be this direct on subject matter. I do consider it an ill of society that we have so openly welcomed cancel culture. And granted now, we're in the 2023 year, we've seen pushback to it. And I can think of at least one story, for example, I've always highlighted in the past, because it meant something to me, the Gina Carano firing. That was a great example, I think, of when cancel culture, whatever your feelings perhaps were on the statement provided, which I'm in complete support of her. I think the way Disney treated her was, Lucasfilm more specifically, was awful. But I don't want to, that story matters to me, but it's so lengthy, I just don't want to get into it yet to keep this video simple. Again, I've stated my position on it enough, and I've probably included some links as well in posts that would better speak to my point of view on the story, rather than going into the weeds on that one, at least in some other aspects. Not just, again, my feelings in defending her, but more so chastising Lucasfilm with the way they behave. There's a lot of threads I don't necessarily want to pull in this video yet on that. That story in particular, I think, it wasn't the only one, but it was one of, I think, the more potent instigators for the revolution against cancel culture. That's where it started to sort of get... Again, I'm not going to say that cancel culture is dead and done yet. I think I still see proof of it existing and thrashing about, but it's nice to have at least an equal force of momentum that's trying to rebel against it. Because we didn't used to have that, at least when cancel culture first emerged on the scene as an entity. That was more so us being reactionary to what was taking place. Versus now, where we're a little more in tune of where society's trying to go. And we're, by some extensions, trying to prevent it. And that's nice to see. Again, as soon as cancel culture is dead, I'll sleep better. But I do worry about the world quite a bit. Again, not about cancellation at all. Honestly, I'm at a point, too, I think the way cancel culture is going right now, most of us are getting to a point where it's like, you know what, I openly welcome it if people try. I'd love people to try to take a swing with it. They'll miss. I have a whole closet of stories that I've said it this way. In some aspects of my mind, I have put myself in a bit of a risky position, but look, I love being a content creator, but heaven forbid, if I lost this channel, if in some way I wasn't able to produce content anymore, because of me trying to stop cancel culture or human mistreatment, to the best extent possible. I wouldn't mind it if cancel culture dies with my work. It's a big statement. I know I'm not usually that assertive, but I'm tired of watching people be mistreated. I don't mean to make this all about myself, but as an abuse victim, I've already dealt with enough mistreatment. I have about 21 years of it. I am very well aware of the damage vicariously. Trust me, a little more damage wouldn't hurt me at all. Now, even in the recovery stage, I have preventative measures. I've been healing. It's a process. But I don't want to see ever people hurt. I don't want to see ever people mistreated the way that cancel culture is done to so many. To varying extents and, again, different severities. Some people have been able to fight against it. Others have, unfortunately, submitted to it. You know, and some people have said, submitted's the wrong word. Some people have felt that there's no other route to take. That they have to submit to the adversity because a feeling, I guess, of disempowerment. It angers me. It makes me grateful, though, to see so many groups, and Falling in Reverse is not the only one. There are many other artists who are speaking about cancel culture specifically. Shinedown did this recently with Planet Zero. I thought that was equally convicting. Demon Hunter, an ever-favorite of mine, did that with Freedom is Dead. There's even other bands as well in other spheres. You know, outside of metal, Casting Crowns, very popular Christian contemporary band. I haven't covered that piece yet. I'm going to at some point. Crazy People. That's apparently all about cancel culture from a Christian point of view. Like, everybody's talking about cancel culture. Why? Because I think a lot of people are noticing how bad it is and how toxic it is to our society. Fallen in Reverse, I think, has presented one of the, like some of the other groups I've consulted, and again, I love Freedom is Dead and Planet Zero. This is equally as potent, if not more, at least, especially on the visual imagery. I mean, it's a bit of, again, like I said, an abstract cinematic vision. Bit poetic, but engaging, fun, and very revealing and honest. And I admire that. As really all the tracks thus far on Neon Zombie, including Voices in My Head and Watch the World Burn, have been. They've all exuded that type of energy. I'm very excited to continue my journey down with Falling in Reverse and listen to more stuff whenever it comes up, because these tracks that I've consulted are quite great, including Zombified. And I hope for those of you that this is a first impression to their work. And if this is very much a raw experience, and you don't necessarily have the engagement history that some of us do, you know, who've been more exposed to Falling in Reverse, even amid me, you know, being only about like over a year in familiarity. Not much. I'm still relatively, I guess, young in my embrace of them. I hope for you it was equally as potent of a release as it was for me, and that you find it quite attractive. I'd love to hear your thoughts down below if you wish to disclose your perspective, or even if you're a longtime Falling in Reverse fan. Did your feelings in any way parallel mine? Because this piece just really sticks in my head. It gives people a lot to talk about. And again, I know it's a lengthy discussion. I try best to keep things in summary, or at least as simplified as I can, but extracting the story of cancel culture, at least on my point of view on it. Fundamentally, I guess for simplicity's sake, I just hate seeing abuse made mainstream by certain factions of society. And I think this song speaks to that pretty well. Let me know what your thoughts are down below if you wish to disclose your perspective. Going forward, of course, I will cover Falling in Reverse. I still have, as I said, yet to publicly consult Voices in My Head, Watch the World Burn, although presently I have listened to those tracks. You'll be seeing those videos in time, probably on the same day, but I'm really engaged with Falling in Reverse. I love Zombified. I love the evolution of Neon Zombie thus far. It's a great piece, and it's really stuck in my head, and I'm sure it will be the same for many people. Thank you so much for watching this video. Before you bounce, feel free to drop a like and comment, subscribe to this channel with a ding on the bell, and share this video with your friends. And consider checking out the description here. There you'll find links to my other channels, as well as addresses to my other social media accounts and ways you can help support my work if you feel so inclined. May God bless you, and looking forward to when our paths cross again.